how mesmerising is the pattern of this flower? The thing I love about camellias is that they come in so many different colours, and when it's time to flower in winter, the whole bush or tree just comes alive. And then the leaves themselves, the glossy, deep green, they're at home in any garden all throughout the year. But the thing is, when they're left to their own devices like this one here, they start to search for light and they get a bit leggy and a little bit scraggy. And that's when it's time to give them some attention, which I'll be doing a little later. But first, let's have a look at what else is on this week's show.
With so many beautiful aloes in full winter flower here at the Adelaide Botanic Gardens, I've come to take a closer look.
Today I'm visiting this beautiful rammed earth solar passive home and semi-rural property that is the pride and joy of retired couple Brian and Linda. An amazing spot you've got here.
And I'll be visiting Cochrane-Ng Botanic Gardens with a renowned South African garden designer and introducing her to some of the marvels of the Australian flora.
You might remember late last year I rolled out instant turf, and hey presto, I had a really good lawn really quickly. And I'm happy to say that despite last summer being a bit of a stinker, it hasn't done too badly. And today I'm going to do a couple of jobs on it to ensure that it powers along when the warm weather returns. First up, I'm getting rid of the weeds. And because with rollout lawn, you're suppressing any weeds that are there, in the first 12 months, you get very few of them. Shortly, I'm going to top dress with a bit of compost. But it's always a good idea to mow first. Now I'm just going to spike the soil using a fork. This will allow air to get down into the root zone and for water and the compost to penetrate better. I'm doing this every 15 centimetres or so. There is a special machine you can hire to do the job, but for most home gardens, a forking like this in winter and again in summer is all the lawn needs. I'm applying the compost at a rate of a small shovelful every square metre. And I'm concentrating on areas that are dead or worn. A light rate will spread the compost around and work it in. Like life in general, lawns can be a bit up and down, but a bit of washed river sand will fill the depressions and the lawn can grow straight through it. If your lawn looks a little bit sick and you've given it a feed and it still hasn't improved, then it could be that your pH is a little bit low. So it's a good idea to apply a dusting of dolomite lime. Mine's pretty good, so I'm happy to say that's one job I don't have to do today. All that compost and sand needs watering in, so if you're not expecting rain, get out the sprinkler. Now my lawn is ready for a growth spurt when the weather warms up. When I notice that growth, I'll apply a handful of pelletised chicken manure per square metre. If you love your lawn now, it'll stay lush and lovable in the warmer months ahead.
This is one of my favourite plants. It's a cycad, and this one is Macrozemia macleayi, and it grows in this part of the world. Every year, you can guarantee that one gardener or another is going to panic because they see these funny little things growing at the bottom. Is it diseased? Is it a fungus? No. These are curious plants, and these are coralloid roots. They don't grow down, they grow upwards through the mulch so they can see the light. And they do it for a very special reason, because in the tops of each of these roots lives a blue-green alga. And that helps to nourish the cycad. The cycad protects it and gives it a nice, gentle home to live in. Together, they're healthier than if they lived apart. All you do when you see these coralloid roots is to add a little bit more compost, raise the level, just so that they're nice and moist. And if they've got a nice leafy rooting surface to grow in, then the plants will be healthier.
Now, these grass trees, Francesca, are something really special.
They look prehistoric.
Yeah, and these are quite old. They've been moved into the gardens, you can see, quite successfully. Do you have things like this in South Africa?
Nothing at all like that.
Francesca Watson is a landscape designer who's here on a visit from her home in South Africa. Now, here's something a bit special for you. What do you think of this?
That is incredible. That is incredible.
This is a conospermum, or a smoke bush. And believe it or not, this is proteaceous.
Gosh, look at this texture. Unbelievable.
The gardens that Francesca designs are quintessentially African gardens, using a palette of indigenous African plants. In many cases, these are in the same families as our indigenous plants, but many look so different that I felt sure she would be intrigued to see them.
It is completely stunning. It's absolutely blown me away. I'd love to use that in the landscape.
Now, Francesca, here we've got a really beautiful grevillea. Just look at the texture of that foliage. Don't you think that's fantastic?
It is gorgeous. Look at those colours.
Oh, yeah, they're good. They're really good. And what I actually like is the way they relate to the colour of this Banksia.
Yeah,
don't you? You've got this rich golden colour. Now, this is Banksia ericafolia, because this foliage is meant to be like an erica. Now, that's one of your plants.
The ericas, yeah. This looks like a giant erica.
Now, how many ericas do you have in South Africa?
We have the smallest floral kingdom in the world and the most rich. We have 9,000 species in all. I suppose 300 or 400 of those would be ericas.
That is extraordinary.
It's incredibly daunting. It's very hard to get to know them all. It's almost impossible.
Absolutely. Francesca, this reminds me a lot of the sort of planting and the sort of plants I saw in South Africa when I was over there.
I think there are a lot of similarities. I think it's got to do with the textures, and the sort of combinations of textures is very similar.
My other motive for bringing her out here was to chat to her about the garden she's created in South Africa.
I do a lot of suburban and domestic work, and I think it's important that the whole thing works together. The building, the garden, the lifestyle needs to work together.
Francesca's gardens are beautiful and considered, heavily planted and layered in their design. Francesca, you came into garden design through an unusual path.
Yeah, I was trained as a dancer and came to garden design because I had an accident, which basically stopped me dancing. I had to rethink my life, and chose it because it had an artistic element and that it was outdoors, and just worked for me from the minute I started. The kind of garden design I do is about a vision or a dream. Somebody has something that they want to achieve, and they may not even have the vocabulary to explain what they want. So I've learned to listen very hard.
So have you taken any inspiration from what you've seen today?
I think there's a lovely simplicity and a clearness of vision in Australian gardens. I think the use of your natural plant material is very strong, and I think your dedication to the use of the natural plant material is inspiring. It's been very exciting.
Camellias are the mainstay of many an Australian garden, and given the right conditions and care, can be absolute star performers. Unfortunately, this one hasn't received the attention that it deserves, and it's out of shape. It's gone searching for the light, and it's lost its balance. So what I want to do is give it a good prune, cut it back, create the new shape, because one thing with camellias is they really do respond to a cutback. So it's time for me to go in. Hold on to your hats, because this could get brutal. I know that it looks pretty brutal, but we've achieved our objective. First of all, we got rid of the lean by bringing the centre of the tree back to these 3 branches. Next season's growth will come out from there, and all it will need in about a year is just a little bit of a prune to keep the shape. Right next door here, we've got another camellia, and it poses a different pruning challenge. In this case, the tree actually has very good shape. The branches are quite evenly balanced. But the problem is, it's sitting here at the front of a bed, it's become quite large, and because of its height, you can't see the flowers. So what we need to do is just bring it down a little. So by cutting it off here, we'll encourage this new growth that's already here to really flourish. And that way it'll bush up and all the flowers will be at eye level to be appreciated. As you can see, it's really starting to take shape. I've given it 7 major cuts with the saw, and now it's just a few little tweaks with the secateurs, and it's pretty much done. I think the key to good pruning is to take your time, look for structure, work back towards it. Always take a moment to step out, look away. Look at how it's looking on this angle, look at how it's looking from over here, and all of a sudden, I can walk right around 360 degrees and think, yep, done. So don't be afraid to take the time and give your camellias a good prune. They'll really benefit and you'll enjoy the results.
You've probably noticed that ornamental grasses have become big business over the past decade in gardens all over the country. And species and varieties of feathergrass, miscanthus, are amongst the most popular and widely grown. Now I want to show you what I think is the best variety, dwarf feathergrass, or Miscanthus sinensis adagio. It forms a tuft of foliage to 60 centimetres high, but the whole plant, including the feathery flower heads that appear in late summer to autumn winter, is only around 1 metre high. Other species and cultivars like this one here can actually grow upwards of 1.5 metres. So the dwarf feathergrass is a great option if you want that Miscanthus look in a small garden. It likes full sun and is as drought toughened as they come. It needs an annual cut back to the ground once a year and dividing every 3 to 4 years. You just got to replant the young green bits on the outside of the clump. It's a great little grass with a big presence. What's not to love?
Perth is well known as a vast sand plain where gardening can be challenging. But head east from the city for about 20 kilometres and the Perth Hills provide a completely different set of circumstances and challenges. Today I'm visiting this beautiful rammed earth solar passive home and semi-rural property that is the pride and joy of retired couple Brian and Linda. What an amazing spot you've got here.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? It's a big block, bigger than we thought we'd get. It's about 5,000 square metres.
Okay.
We've got the regional park to the north and to the east.
So we're bound by National Park?
We are, great. Been in here, what, 12 years now?
You must have really hunted to find the place, did you?
Well, I had a real estate agent friend and I'd said to him I wanted a bush block that I could carve a hole out in the middle. And one day he said, I found your block. And he brought me here and it wasn't what I wanted at all. But I walked up to the top and it was so peaceful. I just thought, this is it.
You were hooked?
Yes, absolutely.
The property is steep and northwest facing. There's a lovely winter creek running through the middle, and the soil depth varies across the site depending on the underlying bedrock. From a gardening point of view, good access around the site is key. 12 years ago, when you got hold of the block, this is where you started.
Yes, it was, yes. And this area was weeds, shoulder-high weeds. So the first thing we did was clear the weeds and then get the path put in. And then we started planting. And the idea was that we fill the area with natives. They could take care of themselves because it was such a big block and I was probably a bit frightened about how to handle it.
And so you do garden it. So originally you thought it would be low maintenance and you'd leave it?
Yes.
But it's a lovely space.
Yes, it is nice, and it's very cool with all the trees.
Moving back towards the house from the native planting area, things really change to a cooler, more shady microclimate. This is also an important consideration in terms of preparing for bushfires, with the moist and more manicured garden areas being nearer to the house, reducing the risk of fire damage. These different zones give a great opportunity to explore plant choices, something Linda really enjoys. So you're clearly a plants person. Is that really what sort of drives your gardening rather than a sort of a landscape design focus? It's more spots for plants? I'm getting that feeling.
Yes, absolutely, yes. We'll buy plants and we'll walk around and search for the perfect spot. And sometimes it isn't the perfect spot and it'll survive, but it doesn't do well. So we might try again and, you know, give it to somewhere else and eventually we'll find exactly the right spot. So this euphorbia is a case like that. Tried it in several places and it is so happy there. That's the Euphorbia stardust.
And how often does it hold those gorgeous white flowers?
It's been flowering for months.
Has it really?
So it seems to flower most of the year, yes.
So where did your love for gardening come from?
Well, I guess it must have been my father because he was a very keen gardener in England. He was a member of the Alpine Society, so he grew alpine plants, among other things. And yes, and I think he'd be very happy if he was here today to see this because...
So did you get involved back then?
No, not really, not at all. I haven't... this was really my first proper successful garden.
Really? Wow, look at this, top of the hill.
Yes.
Very different once again.
And this is the area we're still working on.
How do you go about sort of establishing plants in this granite outcrop country?
Well, the first step is brine with the crowbar. So if it goes in so many inches, then we have a go at planting. Some things survive and some things don't.
Anyway, so watering up here?
For the first year.
Okay.
So we put the new ones in bags so that we know which the new ones are and they will get watered for the first year and then after that they're on their own.
On this higher point of the garden, there are also fruit trees, including 2 varieties of mulberry, assorted citrus, apricot and avocado, as well as veggie patches with tomatoes and leafy greens on the go, and a very interesting mulching experiment underway.
It's a bit of a trial. The key thing is that we had all these bits of tiles which we didn't want to throw away from building the house, and they tell us that rocks are a great mulch, so I thought, why not tiles?
Even on something as tender as leafy greens?
Well, they've been there for a week and a half, and we had a 37 and a 39 degree days just a week ago, so it's they survived pretty well, actually. There's no sign of them getting burnt. They wilt a bit. And they've got the watering is underneath the tile, so the moisture's in the soil.
Certainly a bit unorthodox, but there's no harm in experimentation. You'll have to keep me posted on how this goes.
We'll let you know.
This wonderful garden is the result of a passion for plants that provides many rewards, including a simple yet stunning spot for a sundowner at the end of each day. For Linda and Brian, the key to their success in the garden is straightforward.
Well, working together, yes. Bouncing ideas off each other.
It's much nicer working with somebody in the garden than doing it by yourself. If you do it by yourself, it can sometimes be a bit of a slog, you know, but if you're doing it together, then it's just very nice.
When it comes to plants that positively thrive in Australia's hot, dry climate, few do better than aloes. With their architectural form and unworldly appearance, they make great features and focal points in the garden. The genus contains over 500 species, mostly from southern Africa, but also from Madagascar and the Arabian Peninsula. They vary greatly in habit, from small, low-growing rosettes to tree-like monsters with a couple of scrambling climbers in there as well. Most have fleshy, succulent leaves arranged in rosettes or a spiral and have highly ornamental tubular flowers that range from yellow to orange. The most famous is aloe vera, probably the most recognisable medicinal plant in the world, used for treating minor burns such as sunburn. Tree aloes make a big statement in the garden, and the big daddy of them all is Aloe barbarae. In its native habitat in southern Africa, it grows up to 18 metres high. However, these old specimens at the garden are only around 7 metres high, so it's definitely one for the larger garden. When it flowers, it produces dozens of medium-sized racemes of pink flowers. They're just past their best at the moment. It's pretty adaptable as long as it has good drainage, like all aloes, but its roots and base of the trunk swell considerably as it ages, so never plant it too close to a fence or house. Despite its size, it's susceptible to medium to hard frosts, especially when young, but it will tolerate light frosts down to -1 degree Celsius. Another tree aloe better suited to suburban gardens is this one. It's Aloe thrascii. It grows to 3 metres high and has these fabulous large leaves, which are pendulous and arise from the central rosette. It produces these stunning yellow and sometimes orange flowers, and like all aloes, the flowers are beloved by nectar-feeding birds. Aloes are winter flowering plants, so they're great for adding colour to borders and beds when there's not much else happening in the garden. Aloes do have spectacular flowers, but their foliage is also a wonderful feature, and they're worth growing just for that. Over the last 10 years, there have been a number of Australian-bred hybrid cultivars hit the market. These small to medium aloes are perfect for mass planting out in large areas where they add a reliable splash of winter colour. One of the Adelaide Botanic Gardens mass-planted hybrids is this beautiful Aloe Tusker with its amazing ivory and apricot coloured flowers. They also have the beautiful Aloe Southern Cross and Capricorn mass-planted here around the old mortuary. A lot of these hybrids have longer lasting flowers and improved frost tolerance compared to the species. So they're your best option if you get anything harder than moderate frost to about -5 degrees Celsius. But even then, their tolerance is still being tested by gardeners in cooler areas, so experiment with them. With such a large number of shapes and sizes, there's an aloe to suit almost every garden in Australia. They're so hardy, and with these outrageous hot flowers, why not plant one in your garden this weekend?
Once you've pruned your hydrangeas, don't throw away the offcuts. They make really good propagation material, and it's called hardwood cuttings. And they're terrifically easy to do over winter. Hardwood cuttings simply mean it's this kind of wood that's very firm as opposed to springtime growth that's very flexible. Winter is an ideal time to do this. Most likely, you will have found that the hydrangeas will have lost their leaves. If not, just take them off. This is a leaf node. You can see the buds coming out. There's another leaf node, and I'm going to cut just below that leaf node because that's the point of where the roots are going to come out. Now, the actual cutting should be the size of a biro or the thickness of a biro, good and firm, and make it about 3 nodes long, 1, 2, 3, about 15 centimetres, okay? And that is a very, very fine cutting. You can put that into some hormone rooting powder. You don't have to, but it will stimulate the roots a little bit quicker. It's what they use in nurseries. I've got plenty of propagating mix, in this case, nice, friable, loose medium, and make a hole with the dibber. My dibber is a really flash one. It's an old biro that's really had the gong, so use it as a dibber. Put your cutting in there and firm it up with your fingers, and that's ideal. Next to that, you can put another one. In this pot, I would put 8 to 10. I would then water them in and put them in a semi-shaded spot outside underneath the shrub for a bit of protection. In about 3 months, you'll see root hairs coming from here. The cuttings themselves, you can tell if you wobble them, it's like an old tooth. You'll see that they've got roots. They can then be put into their own separate pots or into the ground where you want them to grow. I like to grow them as a lovely Christmas gift, though. It makes a great idea just to give away because people think you're really clever. Another way to do it is by digging a trench in the open ground and just about so deep, laying the cuttings down in that trench about so far apart, and then you'll find if you just backfill, they will grow in the same manner as the cuttings in the pot. It's a great idea. You get something for nothing.
They told me to make a pile of my handiwork here because someone from the gardens is going to come along and mulch it. That is the end of that, and it's the end of this week's show. But I'm sure some of you have got a camellia at home that could do with a bit of a prune. So get out there tomorrow and get amongst it. Let's see what's coming up on next week's show.
Grafting your own plants at home is not as hard as you might think, and I'm going to show you some easy steps for successful grafting.
I'm in a playground that lets city children get back to nature by playing in it, on it, and through it.
And I'll be giving my indoor plants some much-needed TLC to keep them in top shape.